Welcome to the Ignition Point, the channel for aspiring entrepreneurs. I'm Debbie Hart. We've got Sean Finnegan here as always. And today our guest is the lovely Whitney Johnson.
And Whitney Johnson is the CEO of Disruptive Advisors.
Disruption. I'm going to disrupt you by telling you it's Disruption Advisors.
Disruption Advisors.
Yes, I love it. An incredible thought leader. I met her at a Gary Vee event, and I've actually read and watched a ton of her content, and it's really incredible. Amazing thought leader.
Podcast too, right?
I do. I have, we're just disrupting all over the place, aren't we? Okay. It is called Disrupt Yourself podcast.
Disrupt Yourself.
Yeah.
And then you've also got 1.7 million followers on LinkedIn. How did you achieve that?
Yes, I do. With a lot of hard work and what I hope is very good content.
Okay, good content. And you're an author as well?
I am. I've written a book called Disrupt Yourself. You're sensing a theme. Build an A team, and also Smart Growth, how to grow your people to grow your company.
So what is the message behind Disrupt Yourself, or disrupt generally? Because you're using that a lot.
Yeah, so the message behind disruption is, first of all, companies don't disrupt, people do. So we think about moving organizations forward and, our company needs to disrupt, but actually the fundamental unit of growth in any organization is the individual. And when I think about the idea of personal disruption, what it really is you're making a decision, you're being very deliberate, you're acting, not being acted upon, and saying, I am going to take a step back from who I am today in order to slingshot forward. And that may be something big D disruption. I'm going to change jobs, I'm going to start a company, I'm going to move to a new state. But it might be little D disruption where you say, I don't really like how I talked to my child or to my partner this morning. I'm going to go apologize. I'm going to do it differently. And so when we're willing to do those little D disruptions, we're able to step back and then slingshot into who we want to be, our full sense of self and humanity.
Or what do you find for the people who, do they feel like they're plateaued? Do they feel like they're just like in a comfortable space, maybe on their business or personally? And how do you coach someone who is like kind of just even keel? How do you coach them just to be disruptive?
One of my favorite questions. People oftentimes know it's time to do a big D disruption because they're very good at what they're doing. And it doesn't mean that they are the world's foremost expert on something. It might just mean that they learned the 5 songs on the ukulele that they wanted to, or that they have accomplished what they meant to in this particular job or with this particular business. But there's something inside of them that says, I'm not learning at the same rate that I once was. There's a sense of, I'm feeling a little bit bored. I'm not feeling motivated. I'm dialing it in. And perhaps most importantly, there's this feeling of, there's more for me to do on this planet. I can feel it. And if I don't do it, I will die inside a little bit. And so they have a dilemma because it's very comfortable to be where they are. They like being master of all that they survey, but they know they have to disrupt themselves because growth is their default setting. And so if I disrupt myself, I'll take that step back, I can slingshot forward, I can move forward and become the person that I aspire to become.
Thought leader. It's amazing.
I love that you said growth is our default setting. That's beautiful. So what are some of the biggest failures or challenges you have faced growing along the way?
I have so many. I'll tell you 3 that are major that have been formative for me. One is delivering a speech in front of hundreds of people and them not only not liking it, but hating it. And I have all the comment cards to prove it. And that was an important failure for me because even though the content at that point did not need to change, what I discovered is that when I was speaking, I was making myself the hero. And you can't be a great keynote speaker unless you make the audience the hero. And that was a really important learning. And I don't know that I would have learned it had I not had that face plant within the keynote itself and getting those comments.
I think that's also good advice for people who are so afraid to speak. It's one of the biggest fears, right? Is to get up on stage. Yeah. Public speaking is way up there. And if they just focus to your point, is focus on really helping the people in the room, making them the star of the show.
Exactly.
Right?
Focus on making the people the star of the show, and also remembering that while there are some people that are comfortable in front of an audience, most of us are not, and there's a real craft to it. And if you will focus on not only the craft of speaking, but also focus on making your audience the hero, and focus on how am I going to bless your life, and loving the people that you're speaking to. And I mean that in a real sense, like I genuinely want you to feel inspired. I genuinely want you to learn. Then the focus comes off you, and then you can have a moment of connection. And And one of the reasons why keynote speeches can be so powerful is if you do them well, in that moment, people feel inspired. And when people feel inspired, they want to change.
That's true. And that's why we're doing this show, to inspire people. So
what would you say is second?
Another big failure, and I think this is important because this is an audience of entrepreneurs. I had just come off of Wall Street. I had been very successful as an analyst and feeling a little bit of hubris, I have to confess. And we had a friend who wanted to start a business. And so I thought, let's start this business. And I thought it was a good idea. It was to start a magazine. This was years ago. Not today, not starting a magazine.
Back when they had paper?
Yeah, back when they had paper. Exactly. Wanted to start a magazine. When people tell me their dreams, I'm a bit of a sucker, like Pavlov's dog. Let me figure out how to make that dream a possibility. But I made some really big mistakes. Like, even though it was her dream, but it was our money. We were the primary backers of this dream, but allowed her to have control. Other big mistake is that I wanted to do it, and I'm the primary breadwinner, and I didn't ever really consult with my husband. I was like, we're going to just do this. And that was a bad idea. It's important to consult your partner. And so we lost a lot of money, and it frayed our relationship for a time. It's been repaired, but I think that was an important failure because, number one, now when I go into a business transaction, even though we all have the best of intentions, I'm very, very, very careful about, we need to negotiate this, we need to do it amicably, and then we need to paper it. That's the one big lesson. And the second big lesson is that when I make a big decision, I need to consult with my husband. And if we don't both agree that it makes sense to take on this risk because we are a partnership, I will not proceed, or else I'll find a way to adjust the deal so that we both feel comfortable with it.
So if you're watching, you don't have to go through this because you could take that advice and learn from that failure of having a magazine, not work out, and just taking those two pieces of advice are very critical. It's excellent. So number three, I've been fired, and that feels awful. But here's the lesson. 15%, and probably since COVID, a lot of people have been fired. A lot of people have lost their jobs. When we get fired or we're laid off, we're at the top of an S curve. We're at the top. We're ready to disrupt ourselves. And for whatever reason, we won't do it. We're afraid. We're reluctant because it's a little bit too comfortable. And so the universe gives us a nudge. And so that's the other big lesson for me, is that when you lose a job, and for anybody who's thinking about being an entrepreneur, and probably a lot of people recognize, oh yeah, I wouldn't have started this business if I hadn't lost my job. And so that's the big lesson, is those moments of absolute utter in the depths of, I think my life will never be the same again because I lost my job, could be, and very likely will be, the catalyst that will lead you to do what you actually were meant to do on this planet. That's so good. So powerful.
So what is your biggest piece of advice for new entrepreneurs?
Start. If you're feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling scared, if you're feeling like, I don't know what I'm doing, if you're feeling like you're out of your depth, the answer is you probably are, but that doesn't mean it doesn't make sense to do this. It just means you don't have enough information to know yet. So keep going, because when you're uncomfortable, that's exactly how you're supposed to feel when you start something new.
It's true. There's no comfort in the growth zone, and there's no growth in the comfort zone, like they say.
Exactly. So if
get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Exactly. And so in those moments when you're like, I feel like an imposter, I feel like it was a good idea to do this. Yeah, you do. And that's okay. And I think that's the thing that I would want to do, is just normalize that moment, normalize that feeling. And when you can do that, it will allow you to do that entrepreneurial thing that you want to do.
And I love the advice of start. We talk to entrepreneurs a lot, and they're always like, once I get to this point, then I'm going, it's always the start that stops them, right?
Ooh, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, let's get that start. Love that advice.
There you go.
Yeah. Go for it.
I think we should. Yeah, start.
Just start.
There you go.
Your next book.
Start.
Right? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us today, Whitney Johnson. How can everybody get in touch with you?
I think probably the best way for people to reach out or to connect is to listen to my podcast, which is called Disrupt Yourself. We have a lot of really wonderful entrepreneurs on there. We've had, and also thought leaders and business dignitaries and athletes. We've had Steve Young, we've had Danny Ainge, Ed Catmull, the co-founder of Pixar.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a great book.
Yeah, a great book.
I just finished that book myself.
I actually had her read that book.
He did.
Yeah, that's so funny.
It was
a
great.
great book. And
Yeah.
he is one of the most humble leaders you will ever come across. So maybe since you just read that book, maybe go listen to the Ed Catmull Pixar podcast.
Yeah.
You did an incredible job just packing so much value and great advice in this short time. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
If any of you watching today have any doubts that your current CPA is not helping you take 100% advantage of the deductions you deserve and helping you stay compliant with the IRS, then don't hesitate to get involved with TaxHive today. You won't be disappointed.